Slowly. Thank you. People are coming on, and so we will wait just a few, like a minute, allow people to join in case their clock is says 4:58.
So popular. I have two Zoom meetings right now. I had to go sign into one and say, is this going to be an hour? This one? Is that what we're thinking?
Yeah, we're thinking an hour at the most.
Okay, because I got the other one's an hour and a half. So I told them, see ya.
Well, we feel very honored that you are going to be with us.
I feel very dopey. You know, this is being held in Albuquerque, and I said, oh, good, 3:00, perfect. Well, yeah, but I'm not in Albuquerque, am I? So live and learn.
Let us begin, and people will join as they can. We have a very small group, smaller than we had registered, but people are probably out shopping, trying to get that last minute chips and dip.
They're probably in line. My husband said that it was.
They probably are.
There's no dropping by today.
I know.
If you're after chicken wings, then we've bought them all for Chicken Wing King.
Well, then send us your address. We're coming over.
They're on stage at the Alliance for Hot Wing King, actually. So.
Oh, there you go. Well, then we're all going to see Hot Wing King. There you go.
Oh man, what a time to like have that as a consumable. Oh my God. I didn't even think about that.
It's $4,000 for just the chicken wings for this show.
Holy cow.
Chicken.
That's what only the Alliance can do.
I know. I'm like, wait, that's just the budget for chicken?
And we're not talking props either, you know, it's not rubber chicken.
You'll learn in this meeting that yes, it is props.
But there you go. So hello and welcome everybody. So I think everybody that is here, that's the member, I've seen you at other salons, but we will talk anyway. We try to do educational salons. We try to do it monthly. Sometimes we skip a month here and there, but our hope and purpose is that our judges and our members can continue to educate them to become educated about the various areas of theater that they don't know anything about, or to become more educated about areas that they think they know about, so that as we look at theater, we can better understand what the meaning of excellence is when we talk about theater. So today's salon is on props, and what that is and what that means. We have three wonderful people who work with props, and designers and artisans, and I will let them introduce them, tell you a little bit about themselves, and then I have a little stuff for us to do. So in my top left is Nick, so I will start with Nick. Please tell us who you are and tell us a little bit about your journey as a props person.
Hello, everyone. I am Nick Battaglia. I am the resident prop designer at Actors Express, prop designer and set decorator. So I kind of fell into props. It's a long story, but I went to school for musical theater, got my degree in musical theater, and then went down a crazy alcohol spiral and went to my friend Mary Nye, who, you know, is artistic director at the Lyric, and was like, I need help getting back into theater. And she threw me Always Patsy Cline as my first show, Karen. And so from that, she was like, you'd be great at this. You love vintage, in which I do. And so from that, a stage manager at TO saw that show, who I had worked with in the past when I was acting. And she recommended me, not really knowing that I'd never done props. So my first show was Lyric, my second show was TO, and then I booked like the rest of the season. And Rochelle came up to me and was like, I had no clue you've never done props. And if it hadn't been for the pandemic, I would have just kept working. But here we are, and I just kind of fell into props, and I love it. So that's my prop story.
And Elizabeth Cooper, you are the next person in my line, so please.
Yeah, so I will say that I consider myself a retired props artisan. There was a good almost 15-year period where I did stuff at Actors Express, I did stuff at Synchronicity, I did some stuff at TO, I did some stuff at many of the theaters in town. As a props person, I'm a lighting designer by trade, but because when I was in college, also was doing some props making, it sort of fell into the thing I was doing for a long time. I love tinkering with things. I like making things. And because I have sewing skills and I also have a little bit of painting skills and a bunch of other sort of weird skills together, props is a very easy sort of match for a multi-skilled kind of person.
Okay. And then Miss Suzanne, would you please tell us about you?
Hello, I am Suzanne Cooper Morris, and I'm the props department director at the Alliance Theater. I began my props journey. I was managing an art gallery in Buckhead, and then a friend of mine, Laura Hallett, worked. She was the interim props department manager at the time, and she asked me if I was scared of power tools, and she knew I knew how to paint. And so I was hired as an overhire, never working in theater before. Actually, I didn't even know that people worked in theater. I didn't know that was a job. I'm from Mobile, Alabama, and theater is a volunteer thing that people do on the weekends there. And so I came in and I just never left. And now I am the director of the department. And so I've learned everything on the job. My degree is in art history with a minor in architecture. And so I use those skills every single day. I do a lot of hand drafting whenever we build things. I've been at the Alliance since 2007. I was hired as a overhire and then was hired as a full-time props artisan. And at that time, I also freelanced at Actors Express and Aurora and Horizon, and then became the resident KSU props designer for 4 years and taught a class there in props building. And yeah, it's fun. It's challenging, and I just love to figure out how to make things work there.
So, as an organization, the Suzi Ass Awards does not offer any sort of award for props. And so, why are we having this, right? We talked a little bit about a better understanding of excellence, but and in that effort, we are making an effort to do the first several months of the year in areas where we do not offer any sort of adjudication, in hopes that everybody will learn some. But with that in mind, I've asked Margaret to speak a little bit about this non-existent area of judging. And so I'm going to turn it over to you, Miss Margaret.
Hello. So the judges we have online have all done score sheets many times. And you would think that at least under our set design category, we might at least mention props, but we don't. But I think props make such an impact on our set design scores. They have to, they're visible, they're there. So there have been some discussions going on about whether or not we need to expand the number of people who would be award eligible for the set design category. Whether or not the set design award should also be given to the prop designer, the scenic artist, the folks who worked on bringing that set designer's vision to life. We haven't gotten very far into that, and if it were to be added, that would start with our next season, which starts July 1st. So you won't see any changes to the awards that we hand out this November, but there is every possibility that come November of 24, when we announce the set design award, or if we have to rename it, that it might very well go to the set designer and the prop designer and the scenic artist, whatever their titles might be, the people who were all involved in getting the visual stuff on stage. So if any judges have any opinions about that and want to share with me later, I'd be happy to talk about it. I don't think we want to take up much time with that today in the salon.
Okay. I wanted to do something that we haven't done before, and that is give you guys a little quiz. Yay. So I've got some questions. And if you'll just put into the chat, well, there's only 4 of us, so we don't even have to put that into a chat. We can just say what we think if everybody wants to unmute. Or you unmute, or you can put it in the chat. So I've got some questions. Is a purse a costume or a prop?
Depends what's in it.
Yeah, I think what it does, if somebody's just carrying the purse, it's a difference. But if it has a significance and it adds to the performance, and it has something in it, perhaps in a mystery or some other kind of situation, or maybe it does add to the costume of the person if it's a period piece or whatever.
Okay, we aren't gonna give you answers right now. I'm just asking questions. Is a chair a prop or a set piece?
Set piece.
Okay, anybody else want to answer? Okay,
I vote prop unless it's fastened down. If it's movable, I vote it's a prop.
I think it's a prop also.
okay.
Again, depends on what you do with it. Yeah. How
A book on a shelf. Is it set? Is it prop?
I think it's kind of a set piece.
Prop. If it's used, if it's handled by the actor.
Okay. What about a scarf? Costume?
A scarf.
Prop. A scarf.
A scarf.
Costume unless it's used to strangle somebody.
just what I was thinking. Exactly what I was thinking.
Yes, I would say costume.
What about a puppet? Is a puppet a prop?
That's a good question. I think a puppet is a character in the play.
Okay. What about a working light fixture?
Set piece.
Set piece.
Set piece?
Mhm.
Okay. So what's the difference between a set designer and a set artisan?
I don't know.
Okay. I just wanted to give us some things to think about as I turn to our experts to ask them. I'm sorry, did you have something to say, Karen? As I turn to our experts, ask them about some of these things. So the first thing I have to ask, and any of you can answer, is what in the world is a prop? How do you define a prop? Yes, Suzanne, sorry.
A prop is anything an actor interacts with. The dictionary defines it as something used in creating or enhancing a desired effect. But in theater, it is anything that an actor interacts with, be it furniture or anything else.
So that chair that we talked about earlier is a prop.
It is a prop.
A
That's
set prop, but it's a prop. A light fixture is
It's a
a prop. Yes, Nick.
and even light fixtures that hang. So at Theatrical Outfit, at Actors Express, anywhere that I've worked, if it's a chandelier, that's on me. Even if it's massive, even if it is 10 feet wide, I had to get I think it was like a 10-foot tall chandelier for Wickham's. That was me. Had to go get that one.
10 foot tall, 10 feet wide, but only 6 inches deep. Has to fly.
That's us. But we have the fun task of being like, okay, we made it. Now y'all light it. Bye. Y'all wire it. So that's always the fun part.
So yes, Coop.
Well, and I'll just say, as a props person, basically anything that doesn't really fit well in any other camp is often just, can props do it? Right? I one time at Actors Express, we busted a budget one time because the director was like, I really, really want there to be a thermostat on the wall. And it was like, well, someone else can do that. And he was like, no, no, no. Just, can you please just get me a thermostat? Right? That really lives in the world of set decoration in my world. And they never actually interacted with it, but someone needed to go get it. So it became my job.
And in our world, that is set dressing. So that would be under props because we do all the set dressing.
Yep.
Yeah. And I'm
So
a team of one. So I do, like, if it's a tablecloth, if it's a thermostat, anything that is like decor oriented that's not the walls is me. So when you were going through scarves earlier, I've had scarves as set deck. I've had purses as set deck. Purses have been thrown onto me because the costumer doesn't want to do it too. So how many times, Coop and Suzanne, have y'all heard like, oh, can y'all just go get a purse?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I mean, in our world, purses are props, but they are spec'd by the costume designer because they need to go with the costume, but it comes out of our budget and we do the legwork to either make it or buy it.
I had to make a period reticule one time, even though, like, to me that would mentally, I should be like, oh, that's the costumer, but no, it fell on.
It falls under the same category as suitcases and briefcases for us and backpacks.
Jewelry also fits in this sort of nebulous world because jewelry is often, I prefer if jewelry is handled by costumes, because a lot of times fitting with a costume is more important. But if it's very specific or a pocket watch or things like that, those accessories often end up as props.
Jewelry, if it is, here, will you marry me, is a prop, but as soon as it's on the finger, it's a costume.
Yep.
Okay, confusing. So, or not confusing, actually, you're making it more clear. So there are set props, there are costume props, there are hand props. Talk to us about those things. What other types of props am I missing?
Suzanne mentioned consumables.
Oh yes, I have
chicken wings. Okay.
Yes, chicken wings. So I think what you consider set pieces are furniture, or the set props are furniture. Props is responsible for every piece of furniture, whether it is sat on, leaned against, or stood upon. It is a prop. So a stool, a sofa, a table, a chair, a ladder, a coat rack. Any of those things are props. Either they're purchased, that's the easiest way, or they're manufactured, built, and most times the scenic designer will say, I want this, and we just build it from whatever it is they say. It's directly out of their imagination. Sometimes, if we're super lucky, they'll provide us a drawing. Right.
Really, really great when you get a drawing. That's actually
really
that's the best case.
It really, really helps. We get some research images. I kind of like this, and I'd like it to be this tall and this wide, and that's what we make. And to me, that is super fun. I love to build custom furniture. If any of you saw Trading Places, I built all the furniture on that stage. And
all of it?
All of it. And I enjoyed every moment of it. I don't do it by myself. I have a wonderful team that works with me at the Alliance Theater. I have 2 props artisans and a props buyer in my department. And that is what I enjoy about my job. After furniture, there are hand props like your dishes and tools, the any sporting goods, a basketball, stuff like that. Um, then consumables, which we've already mentioned, chicken wings, whether it's fake food, because it's, when you go see Hot Wing King, which it's a beautiful story, so I really recommend it. Half of the food on that stage is real food that they eat, and then half of it is fake food that has to look just like the real food. So we do a lot of manufacturing, carving of foam and painting it to look exactly like real food. See if you can tell the difference. But all of that is props. On that stage, and I forgot to write it down on my list of props, there's also the running water in the sink, and the fire. It's we had to make a working kitchen on that stage, and all of that is props. Then there are paper props. If there's a newspaper that has to read a certain headline from 1936, we make that newspaper. We print it out. We make real articles in it. It has to work not just for the people on the back row, but it has to work for the actor too. For us, and I know that everybody else has a standard that they live up to. We have a Tony. So in my department, I ask, is that Tony Award winning quality? And so that is what we strive to always produce at the Alliance. After paper props, which are your letters and newspapers and whatever, there are puppets. We build so many puppets, and they're not just props, they're also characters in the play. And so, you know, they have to work for the puppeteer who's manipulating them, but they also have to be safe, and they have to stay together, and they have to look right, you know. And so that the design of that is either a puppet designer, the props designer, the scenic designer, or the costume designer. We all come together and make these characters fit within the play. There are tricks, magic tricks, or like sleight of hand things that happen. You might have seen the newest rendition of Christmas Carol on our stage. All of those props, all of those tricks that happened, those are from the props department. The bell rope that rings, we figured out how to make that work. There were several tricks that got cut as a matter of time, but we figured out how to make it work, and it's just a joy to brainstorm and troubleshoot, you know, and do problem solving, you know. The set dressing from all of the posters or artwork or draperies or books on a shelf, all of those things are from the props department, you know. And a lot of times those things are hard to find. So there's a lot of searching missions at antique stores or online or eBay, or if we can't find it, we make it. There are so many foam books that are made from chipboard, covered, painted to look exactly like a designer wishes. You know, it's whatever's in their imagination that we make happen, and that's always fun. Soft goods like bed linens. We make so many custom bed linens, and we all have skills to make specific draperies, your pencil pleats and stuff. We all know how to grommet the top of a drapery, depending on whether it's a Victorian age or modern. You know, we all have those skills to manufacture those things. And then floral arrangements, and then practicals for lighting. We do a lot of custom building of lighting fixtures, because those are not cheap. And so we have to recreate from research images in order to fit within the fly rails up, you know, the fly system. So they can't be quite as robust and round. Usually they're so often they're look exactly the way they should from front, but they're shortened for perspective, so that they can fit in to a space within the other lighting instruments. And then the last thing which has been in the news so much lately, is weapons. We're responsible for all the weapons, whoever the props department director is, or the props manager, or whoever's on staff is responsible for the weapons in the building. And so that is my responsibility when we have a weapon on stage. And I'm trained in firearm safety, and I make sure everyone follows the rules to keep everybody safe.
That's a lot of prop stuff.
Oh yeah.
Nick, will you talk a little bit about building props? Because Suzanne said, sometimes if we can't find it, we build it, or if they want a specific thing, we build it. So, I mean, I can't imagine just going, let me just build a chair. Let me just build a lamp. I can't imagine it. Talk to us about it.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna kind of combine a question that I see in the chat with your question. And Marilyn, I believe,
Yeah.
wrote about, yes, you asked about the curly clays. So a little bit about too, because there's a lot in this question, is that a lot of prop designers or prop artisans are independently contracted. So Actors Express just hired me as their resident prop designer and set decorator. Like what Suzanne and I have we're the only ones in the city. Everybody else is independently contracted. And I'm going to say this, I kind of blasted this on social media, but I just feel like everybody should know what we're working with, is that prop designers in this city, regardless of theater, make around $1,500 to $2,000 for 4 months of work. And that is from start to end. I'm lucky, Suzanne is lucky that we have like jobs. But while actors make about $550 to $700 a week, this is what we're up against. And so with that, I have done a curly clay show. I love them. I really, really love them. They are so specific. And for I Love to Eat, that was me. I don't know if any of y'all saw I Love to Eat, a theatrical outfit, but it was massive. The set construction, like whoever constructed the set, they did that in the platform. And then my job was the rest. And part of that were light fixtures that were hanging down. So to go into the building question, so I had to source these giant, like 4-foot whisks and arrange them on different platters to make these giant whisk chandeliers. What was the last one that I did everything for? Desire Under the Elms. You know, Kat Conley, who is like head scenic charge at the Alliance, who works with Suzanne, was my set designer. And she had specific requirements for the table, for the beds. So I had to build everything on that stage. And then 2 days before we opened, Freddie Ashley looked at me and said, the couch you borrowed from the Alliance, because we borrow a lot. Prop designers all borrow from each other. We rarely meet each other in person, but we all borrow from each other. And so 2 days before we open, I had to remake the entire couch for Desire Under the Elms. And it had to fit within a certain amount of like measurements, height, fabric. And like Suzanne said, you know, you can buy things, which is the easiest, but you have such a short window for that. You literally have like 2 days. And if you cannot find it online in 2 days and have it shipped to you within a week, then it's like, okay, now you're wasting building time. So
But doesn't it take longer to build than it does to go shop at Goodwill or Rooms to Go or something like that?
well, the thing is with Goodwill, it's always a toss up. You know, like I went to 5 different thrift stores today and I really want a dresser for myself, but I didn't find a dresser. And that's a great example because a set designer can say, I want this specific piece, and then you have to find it. And, you know, there's compromise within that of like, oh, okay, well, it may not be the exact same thing, but you want to get it as close as possible. And so past that one day of hitting up 8 thrift stores, you're just wasting your time and you're wasting time you could be working. So like the table that I built for Desire Under the Elms, I used legs from Hometown Boy, from a table in Hometown Boy. another Curly Clay reference. And then just had to cut all the wood myself and but the fun part comes like 5 days later when your fight coordinator is like, oh, we're choking people on this table. You have to make it, withstandable to throw someone on.
Everything has to be danceable, sittable, standable, fight
Like the
choreographer.
furniture is a triple threat.
Yes, absolutely. It has to roll on stage on roller skates.
Okay.
It has to be like solid. It has to be lifted. Like, oh, the actors need to lift it. One actor has to lift it. Two actors have to lift it. But then 8 are standing on top of it. Have fun.
Actors have the arms of cooked spaghetti.
Elizabeth Cooper, would you talk to him just before everybody came on? We were talking about the what is now becoming an antiquated term of prop master and prop designer and prop artisan. Talk to us a little bit about what's the difference in that those terms and what people are calling themselves.
Yeah, so props designer is really prevalent. There are a lot of I know for instance, with Synchronicity, who I used to do a lot of my props with, the artistic director and I have a sort of an ongoing argument because I keep asking to be billed as the props artisan and not as the props designer. Because the way that I sort of look at myself is I am helping the set designer make their vision come to life. So I am there as an artisan. I am there as sort of the hands to make things happen, as opposed to this is necessarily my design, or someone else has provided me drawing, someone else has provided me sort of what a thing should look like or what they would like, and then my job is to actualize that thing. But no, absolutely no disrespect to anyone who likes designer as a title, because there is a lot of design in doing props, right? Props master is now really sort of a more where film can have that title. It's not often as well. You are working by yourself, entirely by yourself. You don't have a crew of people, right? If you're at the Alliance, there are hands that are available to you. But if you're working for most of the theaters in town, if you're a props master or a props designer, you're not in charge of anyone. You're just you. So it doesn't really work. It's also just kind of a wild term, right? It brings up a whole bunch of stuff that why would we bring that up? So I like artisan for myself, and to sort of give sort of some more light to what Nick was saying. You, as a props person, you put 8 million miles on your vehicle. You just there are times when I'm doing props where I'm like, if I could just get out of my car, I would be really happy. Because you're driving all over the city. I got sent one time to go get in the middle of May to go get a live Christmas tree for a show because they really wanted it to be a live Christmas tree. None of the fakes that we had would work, and it was like, really, we need a live Christmas tree. And I drove somewhere to South Georgia to a Christmas tree farm in May to get a Christmas tree. So it's a real sort of, it's, you are a department of one, and I like artisan, which I guess is the answer to the question. But lots of people go by designer, and they are designers. It is a design function as well.
Okay. Would you talk, I mean, you've talked a little bit. Would you can talk a little bit more about the relationship between the prop designer and the other designers that are there, and the other artists that are there working on a piece? You've talked a little bit about um, taking their thoughts, their designs. So where do you fall in, where do you fall in when you're talking about prop design? Who do you answer to, the set designer? Do you answer to the costume designer? Do you answer just to the director? Who do you answer to, or how does that all work?
It depends on the project. For the most part, I answer often for me, I find that I answer mostly to the set designer. Although there are a lot of pieces I may answer directly to the director, and the set designer's like, there's not a lot of it really just depends on what the show requires, right? There are shows where there's a lot of decorating of the set and there's a lot of things that require sort of group project world. Anytime there's a lighting fixture on the stage, that's a group project. That's going to be electrics is going to need to deal with that thing. You're going to need to deal with that thing. Potentially other people so it's the same thing with costumes. You know, do we have jewelry? What are we doing? How does this work? Is this a purse? The purse. So we are probably as props people, you are collaborating with pretty much everyone on the whole production because there are things props crosses into almost every place, right? If you're dealing with specifically consumable things like food, you're also going to have a lot of conversations with actors. What can they eat? You know, I was charged one time with creating a fish dinner for an actor who was vegan. He's got to eat a fish dinner on stage. He's got to eat something. How do we make something that is believably fish for him to be able to do what he needs to do and for the audience to see what they need to see? So it's a dance.
One of our Hot Wing King actors is a vegan.
So I'm assuming that he eats the ones that are made out of foam, that we have to figure out which ones they are.
No, we had to get in vegan chicken wings.
Wow.
And
Which
so
is-
also, oh, go ahead. I'm so
I was
sorry.
gonna say, which is, I'm assuming, much easier nowadays
Yes,
than it used to be, because now they have faux chicken. It
absolutely,
looks like chicken, you know.
absolutely.
Something else that we've kind of run into, and I know I talked to Suzanne about this last year, Coop, I don't know what you've had to deal with, but smoking on stage as well. That's also us. And so, you know, even up to 2 years ago, and Karen, you use these cigarettes back in Patsy Cline. It's the electric ones that like you can puff. Those are now deemed unsafe. Like that company has had to recall them all, even though they said they were safe for consumption.
Yeah, thank God.
And so my last show at TO, there was smoking involved. And we ended up having to just do the powder puff cigarettes, which they look awful, but there is no safe alternative that we could find and source within the moment. And so you have these older shows that people do where people actively smoke on stage. And, you know, finding out a solution for that is also another thing. And sometimes the directors are super adamant about it. And, you know, you talk about the hierarchy. I can tell you, I've been on text messages where it's the director and the set designer in a text thread, the costumer and the director in a thread, the electrician, like the light designer and the director in a thread, the electrician and the light designer in a thread. And it's all going on in the same day, all the time. And sometimes you loop in the TD too. And it's just, there's so much communication. This is such a collaborative work. It's not even funny. And with that, we have to be able to do everything. Like, so make food, make fake food, make furniture, reupholster. I mean, I can't even tell you the amount of skills. And every day my mom is like, you can do that. And I'm like, yes. It's not that I can, we also have to.
I learned to eat fire because I wasn't going to ask an actor to do it if I didn't know how to do it myself. So I learned to eat fire so that I could help an actor get set up to do a fire eating moment on stage.
I forgot
if
to
there's a
mention that
magic
fire
trick.
is also a prop.
Yep.
And
Okay.
also, there's such fine lines with the fire watches and what's even legal in Georgia inside a theater. And so that those laws change constantly, but you have to have the fire marshal on hand to do a fire watch if there's fire on stage. Every single time there's fire on stage, it's very costly.
I would imagine it would be. So we now come to the point where because I would like us to be able to end on time, because Marilyn has already said she wants to make sure she hears the, no, she has another
Another Zoom. Yeah,
another
yeah.
Zoom. And
Can we ask
Margaret
questions?
wants to, yes, we are at that point where we can ask questions.
Okay. So
Um,
I thought that was a provocative thing about whose budget it comes out of. And that's really where the rubber hits the road a little bit, I would think, because budgeting is a really important part of theater. And when you say, well, if you're going to take that on my budget, then how does that work? Are they pretty good about budgeting? Do they know ahead of time what they can afford? Or I guess it depends on the theater. I don't know how budgeting is done in theaters. Maybe that's another topic, Brenda, to
okay,
have
I will.
a salon about, is how do you apportion things so that things come out right? And you don't have your designers getting mad because they can't afford to do something.
They have to live
Okay.
within their means, but our budgets at the Alliance are set a year and a half before
Wow.
we ever do the show, because it has to be approved by our board. And that is before our season for the next year is ever announced. So we do a lot of planning way in advance and have our budgets approved, and we have to live within those budgets. At the Alliance, we're lucky. We have larger budgets than most of the other theaters in Atlanta, but they have a version of the exact same thing, is that their budgets are approved and set, and so they must live within their means. If there's an occasion, and this has happened to me when I've been freelancing, when we've reached our budget for props and we just cannot afford that bedspread that's going to save the play, then I have had directors buy it themselves, or the artistic director of the theater has purchased things themselves so that they can stay within the budget that has been approved. I mean, it's a dance that everybody does. If directors many times would like to try something first before, and I definitely support the discovery that happens in the rehearsal process, because sometimes a prop just doesn't work. They've asked for this thing and it just isn't working for the story or the actor, or visually it just doesn't do what they wanted it to do. And so we've purchased this thing and it just needs to be returned. So that is, and then we have to get something else, so that has to go back and be refunded into the budget. And there's so many spreadsheets and organization that has to happen with that. I don't know if I answered your question. I'm rambling now.
So I think the one of the questions, or as I heard it, was whose budget does it come from, right? So does it have a budget of its own? Does it follow up under sets? Does it follow up under costumes? So it has a budget of its own.
Yep.
Yes, I think that
That's the hope, right?
Ideally. And the other
We're
thing that I will,
allotted
the
go
other
ahead,
thing
Sue.
that I was going to say is different theaters budget props differently. Some theaters, when they take the pass to make the budget for the show, they say, okay, we're going to do it very specifically. I understand that this show is going to require more props budget because I'm seeing what's in the text. There are some theaters in Atlanta that do what they call standard budgets, which is how I did a show one time that had 5 props one of them was a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, an umbrella, a tambourine, and like 2 other very inexpensive things, but I had an $800 prop budget because the theater worked on a standard budget. And then I did another show at that theater where they needed a grand piano and everything had to be double. So all the scenery was, there was a crushed version and then there was the original version. And $800 was still my props budget.
Yeah, I think you'd negotiate a little.
Oh, yes, you do a lot of negotiating.
Well, to also tie into it, to Brenda, what you were saying earlier about isn't it faster just to go get it? They may not have the budget, but with that flat rate that they're paying you, you can just build it. And with that skill set, you can just build it. And so that too is why a lot of the times we just end up building things. Suzanne, I know you're different over there at the Alliance, but for independently contracted prop artisans and designers, and for people like me, my budget typically every show at Actors Express is around $1,000. And so sometimes you can't find it. Sometimes it's just not in the budget. So you have to make the 2 beds, the table, the bench, the cabinets, everything.
With the price of wood, I would think it might be.
So we do have backstock, like the table that I keep bringing up. All of that was from the discard pile or from leftovers. A lot of it gets renewed, reused, recycled, especially in props. I think a lot of props designers are secretly hoarders because they're like, that cup will come in handy. Do not get rid of that cup. We're putting it back in storage. And so it's just one of those things where I pull stuff from previous shows all the time. It just cuts off that budget.
You paint it, you make it look brand new and fit a different show, or you reupholster that sofa and it's brand new again.
And all of us are really good at driving down the road and someone has put something out on the curb and you're like, that is the thing. When I was doing Bug at Actors Express a bunch of years ago, I needed a front for an in-wall air conditioning unit. And literally, like, I had reached my, like, I don't know where I'm going to get this. I think I'm going to have to start building it. And I was driving down the road in my neighborhood and someone had put something out on the side of the road. And I went, thank you, theater gods, for letting me have this thing I absolutely have to have. Also, you're really good at walking through Walmart, Home Depot, whatever, and going, okay, that looks enough like the thing. Let me figure out how to get these pieces to fashion whatever it is.
Those poor Home Depot employees, they see me coming and they're like, oh no.
Oh, it's
You're
so
gonna
funny
use
to talk to
something
them.
in a unintended way. They bless their hearts.
They want to help so badly, and you're like, listen, I just want to make a giant restaurant vent hood. What do you have that looks like? And they're like, and it's like, get out of my way. I'll just go get the barrels.
I had a weird interaction with a Lowe's employee in the plumbing section because I was building shackles for a show. And he kept following me. Just tell me what you're working on. I can help you. Just tell me. And I was like, I'm building shackles. And he left me alone.
Yeah.
He was like, okay, great. Good luck. And he left.
There was a knife barrel. There was a knife barrel in Theatrical Outfits production of I Love to Eat with something like 60 knives. And I can tell you that after like 10 to 15 knives at any thrift store, the cashiers will give you a weird look. Every time. And like without fail.
And that roll of plastic.
Yep. Or anytime you're driving down the road with a coffin in your vehicle.
Oh,
we're on every FBI list for our Google searches for research. I had to build an explosive vest for Hands Up. And so I had to model it to get it approved by the Curly Clay twins, because they designed that show. But so there's a photograph of me in a explosive vest. super fun. We have to Google what dead bodies look like because I've made so many cows. I've made lots of cows. That's on my resume as I'm a expert at making dead bodies and cows.
But
Are there
also
other
when
questions?
Comes out.
Yeah,
That's
Brenda, I have a question.
Yes, yes, Karen? Question?
This is kind of an odd question, but first of all, thanks for all you guys do. As an actor, I appreciate you very much. The show Beauty and the Beast, that trick at the end, I was told once that trick is very it's very secretive, highly kept secret, that only the person who builds that can know how the trick works. Is that true, or is that an old theater story?
No, they
Those
keep
would
that
be
one very close to their heart.
That's exactly the words I was going to use. There,
That's a what?
that it would be held close to their heart. Whoever made that, it would be a secret. I mean, sort of like a patent.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
So there are props or things, the ways things work that that the entire industry just says, no, we don't share this. Is that what you're
Yeah.
saying?
Yes, like
it's-
the Harry Potter shows. I mean, there's so much technology with those that they're not shared with anybody.
Well, a
And
lot of the
Disney,
times they're custom to that show. And so it's kind of like if an actor were to do something in a scene and somebody were to see it and copy it, you know, it's got it has that feeling and that heart to it. Like that's an intellectual property, and you can't necessarily like go and touch it yourself. But that is hard work that these artists and designers have come up with as a group specifically for that one moment in time during the show. And like there's a real life example that happened about 10 years ago with God, what was the show at the Alliance where she vomited? God of Carnage.
Mhm.
Oh,
Like my friend at the time was a costumer at the Alliance. It was John Hardy. And I was like, how did they do that? And he's like, we can't tell. We can't tell. It wasn't until like almost a decade later, I asked Liz Campbell Mills, but that was the way she vomited on stage was highly protected. I remember that.
there was
Oh, are there
also
other questions? Yes.
there was also a play at the Alliance that was magical realism, and every time the clock would stop when you were when something was happening in the room, the clock wouldn't work outside, and then when you opened the door, the clock would work somewhere. And I heard that was available. If the show was being produced, you could talk to some of the clock people, and they would help. Would you borrow a prop for that particular play? Which I wish I could remember the name of it. But anyway, this has been very interesting. I have to say, I really find this terrific. I'm on a Facebook group. How I've got into it, I don't know, but it follows pictures like a crown, and it shows different films that have used that crown. Oh yeah, this was just used, and they'll tell you jewelry and stuff, and it always seems so subversive to get to see that, but it's neat.
So
Brenda,
we
I have
have,
a question. I know we have just a couple minutes,
yes,
but
I
I
was
have a
about to
quick
say, we have
question.
about
Yeah.
5 minutes left. So one more question and it will be
So-
yours, Margaret.
If the Suzis are going to widen the umbrella for the set category award, we've talked a lot about job titles. What are the job titles that should be included in that award? Or do we leave it up to the theaters to tell us who should be included if there's an overall set award?
it's a really good question. It is, and it's different from every single production as to how intensive the props were for it. So it would take a lot of paying attention to the props in every production to be familiar with what they are. I think it's probably both of those things. I think it is, if it is a props designer, who in my book would be equal to the scenery designer, the costume designer, the sound designer, and electrics and projections. But then on other shows that they don't list a props designer, it would be individualized by production, in my opinion.
Well, and it also, I think, would take a lot of education on the theater's parts, right?
Mm.
Because every theater has a different relationship with how props are managed and how props are considered within that organization. You know, you have some that absolutely you are on par with everyone else on the production as far as how invited to meetings you are, etc. And then there are some places where it's really like, oh, we can just get anybody to do props. It's not that big a deal. We'll just get, the interns will get props, whether they necessarily have any skill to do that or not. So it really is, you kind of run the gamut. Most of the professional theaters in town or semi-professional theaters in town don't go, well, we'll just get some interns to do some props. But that has happened before.
It's
So I
happening
think
a
it's
lot right now.
Yeah.
I get calls often from theaters around town because we have a lot of stock at the Alliance, and I really love to lend it to anybody who needs it. If I'm able to help, I want to help. But I've gotten many, many calls in the past 3 years saying we don't have anybody running props on the show. Can I have this list of things? And I always provide when I can. But I think that there are so few people working in props right now. Everybody was let go as soon as the pandemic hit because they're all independent contractors. And so theaters are struggling to find people to props design or be an artisan or even a collector of things for their productions.
And props was the first thing to go. Let me
Yeah,
tell you that
absolutely.
is that I had every theater knocking at my door from 2018 to 2019. 2020 hit, and I was booked until the middle of 2021 with shows from TO, Actors Express, Horizon, Lyric. I heard nothing. And I remember walking into Horizon one day and they were filming a show. Lights, sound, musicians were there, and the set was decorated. And I was like, who's doing props? And they were like, oh, we are. But they were the last ones that I had worked with. And I was kind of like, y'all let me go in March and haven't said anything. And it's now October, because a lot of theaters are like, oh, we can pull clothing. Oh, we can pull stuff. So typically we're the first to go. Costumes are second, but not everybody knows how to run a light board and a sound board. So like that knowledge is key.
Funny you mentioned costumes, Nick, because every now we do have shows that are submitted for Suzi Adjudication that have no costume designer credited. I'm like, were the actors naked?
Well, but we don't judge if they've hired them, do we? I thought that was if they had.
If there's no costume designer credited, then that category does not get judged.
Yes, but we used to say we didn't if they hired the costumes. I mean, if it was,
if it's a rented costume, we don't judge.
Right, it has to be something that was made. We didn't used to talk about projections, and now we have projections as a category. So we do change things as we see what's happening.
And
so
I will add to the conversation too that you can have props and set deck, and I've done it, and I'm not tooting my own horn here, but save a set. Like the set and the decoration, those are different. We talk and we work, but they are very different. And they should be viewed differently too. It's like as somebody who's been on both sides, it's like looking at a musical number and blaming the music director for the choreography. But they are two separate things that work in tandem.
And props has the same problem that costumes does and sound does. That everyone listens to music, everyone wears clothes, and everyone picks things up in their daily life. So everyone has opinions about them in a way that is really sort of fascinating sometimes.
I hate to do this, but it is 6 o'clock and I promised to let people out at 6. I really appreciate all of you who all the participants for coming. A small number, but still such a good conversation.
It was.
And I have nothing but gratitude and appreciation to Nick, Suzanne, and Elizabeth Cooper for sharing your knowledge, for getting us aware of what's happening behind the scenes, and to get us thinking and questioning. And so we that is much appreciated.
And we can talk
Thank
it up
you.
among ourselves too, you know, just the fact
Mhm.
that we've learned something about it and do it again even. But it was great. Thank you so much.
I
And
appreciate,
I
I
am always
appreciate
here to
being
answer
invited.
questions. Like, if y'all ever want to talk about it, I love talking. I know Suzanne loves educating people as well. Coop, this is our first time meeting, and it's been great meeting you, but we love to talk and we love to let people know what we do because it is so hidden.
Yeah, we'll get stories next time.
Mhm.
Oh, we have
Thank you.
stories.
Our next salon is March 20th. It's a Monday. It'll be at 7. Right now, it's there's a question about whether it will be sound augmentation or whether it will be wigs and hair. But you will get something soon that will clarify that. And I hope that you will be back for that. Thank you. Go forth, see the Super Bowl if that's what you'd like to do. Go do whatever you'd like to do because we are done. Thank you. Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
friends.
you,
Been fun.
thank you.
Astrid, love you.